if I could start my golf journey again, knowing what I know now, this would be my plan. And I've been thinking about this lately because a friend of mine has taken up golf. They are a beginner golfer and they have fallen in love with it, but they're very much in the stage where it's still quite high on the frustration level. So they're going to the range, they have a set of clubs that they've been sort of given or lent from family and friends, and I think they've played a couple of 9-hole rounds on a par 3, but not yet a full 18. And so very much their focus has been heading to the range and getting that practice in to really try and get good, to try and get good enough to feel like they can go onto the course and maybe try and stitch a score together. So when they asked me this question, I got really excited because I feel like when I look back on the year of going from 34 to 9, there was a lot that went well, there was a lot that I enjoyed, but there was a lot as well that I wish I could do differently, because I really feel like I almost rushed a few things in that year by setting myself the challenge. It was brilliant in that it inspired me to get out there, to practice, to challenge myself, but it was also quite a tight time frame, and I set it very much from a place of naivety, not knowing how long that would take to get to single figures, but knowing it was probably quite a big ask. And so I feel like that time frame, and the more that I came close to it but felt like I was so close yet so far and that time was running out, the more I feel like I rushed. And I've since had to redo, especially in my swing, a lot of the habits that I really grooved in. And I'm talking, as you would have known from my channel, the inside takeaway, the rolly wrists, the top of my backswing being a little bit long, and then previously, I'm kind of working on this, it's getting better, the over the top out to in. And so by rushing in that year and really getting a swing that could get me so far, I feel like the positive was that I managed to do it, but the negative, I try not to be negative, but if I was to pick something that I wish I did differently, by rushing my swing and just playing with that kind of big swing rather than building it out, it really meant now that I've got to redo a lot of changes, and I've had to make a lot of swing changes that I really just grooved in that rushing, in that year of trying to just play a lot and get my handicap down. So when I think about my answer to my friend, but also the advice that I would give myself if I was starting again, the plan that I would plot out for myself, this is what came to mind. The first thing is I would break my time into 2 projects, learning to swing and learning to score. I feel like we've got a fly friend somewhere on the cap there. I can see it moving in my peripheral. And I would break it into those 2 parts, learning to swing and learning to score, because I think when I look back as a beginner and I would head to the range and I would bash through buckets of balls, it was all about learning to swing. But the way that I learned to swing was from a big swing, rather than actually starting small, which is what I would do in this fresh plan. If I could go back with hindsight and start again, I would start with small swings, small movements, and build out from there. So I would really focus on nailing my takeaway, getting that set, and then rotating through, and just working on that until I feel like I had that in a really good spot. Not necessarily perfect, but good enough to then start building it out to that next stage, which then would be the turn. Getting into that top of the backswing with the takeaway, the turn, then rotating through. And you can see the pattern. I would just start with small swings, small moves, get really solid, build that foundation, and then add the next in, and keep doing that, working my way from the kind of start of the swing out, or from impact, I should say, out, the actual connection to the ball, and build out from there, rather than what I did was start with a big swing, which once you've started doing that, there's so many moving bits that you end up by kind of getting the reps in of a big swing all the time when you're a beginner. The reps that you're getting in and the moves that you're grooving are then maybe ones that you have to go back and change later on, which can be so hard. And swing changes are so frustrating. So if I could go back, I would start small and build that foundation and then start to kind of grow that swing out from there. So if that's the learning to swing column, that's where I would spend my time when I'm heading to the range and working in the short game areas if you've got access to them. And then when it comes to the learning to score project, I would break that down by working from the hole out. And I know that putting is not as exciting necessarily to practice as heading to the range, but I promise you that if you can get really good at 2-putting, that is where you will save so many shots when you head out onto the course. I cannot tell you how many shots I wasted with poor putting, especially when I was a beginner. And because I'd spent quite a lot of time working on my long game, I maybe would be able to get on the green in a good number of shots, and then I would 4-putt, or worse. And you just think, what are you doing? It's one of those things where, because you almost take it for granted a little bit, and we really shouldn't, but as a beginner, I think we're so drawn to heading to the range, working on our swing, wanting to sort of feel like we can go out there with confidence, which is absolutely key. But from a scoring perspective, when we look at that column now, the learning to score project that we're focused on, putting is a game changer, which seems so silly to say, but being able to make putts from 3, 4, 5, 6 foot, being able to close those out with confidence rather than sort of let them drift by because you're a little bit nervous or they feel like a knee knocker, that will change your scores. And then I would work out from that distance. So then really focusing on, once you've nailed that knee knocker range, then work on the lag putting, so the long putts, knowing that if you get it onto the green, especially as a beginner, it's not necessarily going to be as close to the pin as you like. Then you know you need to work on your long putts, because if you're not necessarily aiming for the pin, or if you are aiming for the pin but it doesn't necessarily go there, knowing that you can walk onto that green with confidence because you've practiced your long putting, again, will be a game changer, both for your scores and your confidence. So that's where I would start when it comes to the learning to score project, getting really good at 2-putting. And then I would take on, I would say, one of the areas that has become my nemesis over time. I'm getting better at them now, and I'm actually very excited because there is something coming up which will help me get even better at them, but it's greenside bunkers. If you can become a one-shot wonder out of a greenside bunker and get out of them first time, again, it might be nowhere near the pin, but if you can just get out of a bunker in one and practice doing that, getting confident out of the sand, that again will be an absolute game changer for not only your scores, but your confidence. Because I can't tell you, oh, looking back, if only I'd practiced bunkers, because I would blow up in a bunker. And that, knowing that and experiencing that, would be that ripple effect through my rounds, that if I then got into the sand, internally, I'd feel that dread. My heart would sink, and I would know that I'm going to either struggle out of this, or I would just be walking that walk feeling nervous, feeling anxious, rather than if I'd practiced getting out of a bunker first time. Again, it doesn't have to be even near the pin at this stage, but just getting out in one, I promise you, will save you so many shots and build your confidence no end when it comes to taking on those shots, knowing that maybe you've got a tee shot on a par 3 and you see it leak into a bunker and you're thinking, no problem. Or you take on an approach into the green and you see it accidentally leak into the bunker, and again, you're thinking no problem. Whereas what I would have been thinking is, oh no, like this is going to be the end of my card, or this is definitely going to be a blow up hole, and I'm going to be stuck in this bunker until I'm picking it up and then trying to just move on and regain that confidence. So after putting and bunkers, I would work on short game, really again, building out from that hole. So we're looking at putting, we're looking at greenside bunkers, and now we're looking at short game. Because if you can give yourself a chance around the green, particularly practicing those tricky shots, again, I promise you, this will pay off when it comes to your scores. And I keep saying it, but your confidence on the course. Because if you know that your long game's a little bit leaky, which it's going to be when you're a beginner. I mean, my long game gets leaky now. You've seen it in my 5-hole challenge. But I know that if I can rely on my short game and feel confident walking up to that ball rather than nervous, that just completely changes how I'm standing over that ball and the chance that I might give myself to scramble a score rather than let it slip away. And then lastly, because I feel like this is quite a big column, the learning to score column is quite a chunky one. The last thing that I would tell myself as a beginner, and one thing that I wish I started working on sooner in my golf journey, is learning to play under pressure. And this can feel quite daunting because when you are a beginner, or when you're sort of heading out onto the course for the first few times, you just want to play. You just want to put what you've been practicing into action and see where your game's at, see maybe where you're leaking shots, where you might want to kind of focus your energy when it comes to your practice. Absolutely. But I would also really urge you to try and play under a sense of pressure, even if you're only playing 9 holes, or if you are, say, heading out for 18 and you want to use half of it to practice a little bit and just get familiar on the course, but then the other half to practice playing under pressure, that again will be something that when it comes to putting cards into your handicap, if you've become familiar with that feeling of pressure, with playing under a sense of nerves, that will only pay off. Again, I promise you, I keep thinking this because I know, looking back, I didn't do this soon enough. And that was something that even now, I can get a little bit of carditis going on because I just wish I'd really sort of gone in the deep end when it came to putting my game under pressure. And if you do that from the get-go, that's going to be a really strong muscle that you've built because you've got the reps in of playing while you're feeling nervous, while you're feeling like you're under pressure. And you could do that in a couple of ways. It might be a match with friends where maybe you put a little bit of money on it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but you know, to add like a little bit of kind of something on there to try and win, to want to do well. So it could be a match. It could be that you maybe just do get cards in, whether you're doing 9 or 18, get a general play in, start really feeling like you want to track your score and put a sense of pressure onto your play to see how your game holds up. And again, to use this not just from a place of feeling frustrated if it doesn't go as you hope, but to look for, what do I need to work on? Where did I fall down a little bit when I was feeling like I was under pressure or when I was nervous? What were the putts that I maybe missed when I knew I was making this, like hitting this putt for the best score that I've made on this hole before? Or when I was down in the match against my friend, what happened? What did I start to notice in myself, on my mental game, that I could learn from early and start to work on early so that those muscles are going to be so strong as you progress through your golf journey. So there we go. That would be my plan. To recap, if I was starting again, knowing what I know now, I would focus on 2 projects: learning to swing, starting with small moves and moving out, building my swing out, and then I would focus on learning to score. And that might be the biggest chunk. But again, in your practice, if you can focus on starting from the hole with putting out, starting with those knee knockers, then those long putts, then those greenside bunkers, and building your way out from there, that will really make all the difference to not only your confidence on the course, but your scores, I promise you. And that is what I wish that I knew earlier and at the beginning of my golf journey. So let me know, if you're a beginner, what stood out to you as maybe a takeaway that you're going to take into your practice or into your game? And if you're an experienced golfer, what do you wish you knew? If you could start your golf journey all over again, what's one thing that you wish you could do differently or that you would pass on to yourself if you were to go back and be that beginner all over again? Let me know in the comments below and I'll see you there.